Hi everyone, it's Liesl from Artist Palette. We are doing the blue heron drawing today. I have it here for reference. I also gave an optional outline, so if you have, if you want to use that, it should be when you signed up. You get a little outline that you want to, if you want to use it, and also if you want a little bit more of a challenge, you can learn how to draw it out yourself a bit first if you're looking to just make sure that things are just how you want it. So you have options there. And I have my outline here, very light and penciled in, as I mentioned in how to draw it out. You want to just press very, very light so that you can easily erase and you don't get all these continuous harsh lines along the edge so it doesn't look too much like a cartoon. I have, of course, an eraser, very important, even on the back of your pencil. This is an HB. Then I have a 2B, 4B, 6B smudger, or a Q-tip works as well. I find that when I'm drawing too, like a paper towel or something on the side as you're drawing so it doesn't smudge everywhere, especially if you're using charcoal like me. You can use whatever you think is best for you. Alright, let's get started. So you can pause, take your time throughout this. Again, if you are looking to draw this first, go to the other video. When you signed up, there's a couple of videos, so you can learn how to draw it out, and then we can get started on this one. Alright, I am starting with a 2B. You can also just start with an HB. It depends on the supplies that you have. It's not like you have to have exactly what I have. So with my 2B, I'm just not going to press as hard first, and you're going to see a lot more of my lines as I get this started. For the beak, I like to just start at the bottom. Follow that. That I do want to be more an obvious line. Okay, and then what I've done is just a little bit at the top, press a little bit lighter. Press a little bit lighter. I'm pressing harder at the bottom. And a little bit lighter at the top. Through the middle, pressing again a little bit harder. A little bit harder here. And then of course you have an eraser just to clean up any little lines to keep it a little bit thinner overall. Gotta be careful because as soon as I wipe it, it starts to smudge, which for this is not too bad. Alright, and then from this beak, the eyeball, it's got an interesting eyeball. You're going to start with a circle, so we can always darken it up with like a stronger, more darker pencil or charcoal. And I just started with a circle there. If you want to switch to like a 6B or a 4B in the middle, I'm just making a miniature black circle. Right in the middle. So basically, when you look at this one a little bit closer, it's just got a black eyeball right in the middle and then a darker circle around it. Pretty simple for this bird. Alright. And back to not my 6B, I'm going to use my 2B again. So in the outline, you can either, see how there's like that nice feathers kind of flicking back, has this nice little crest folding backwards, a couple little feathery hairs, looks like it's just slicked back. From the beak, we're just going to come back to that in a bit, but right around the eye, I'm going to now just flick and pull like you're making a brow. So it looks like you're just making a brow. So it's right on the inner part of the eye. And then attaching really close to the beak. Okay, so a little bit of darkness down here, wrapped around a bit of the eye. Press very light pulling that back. You can either go up to the top of the head. I left a little highlight on the other side. It can vary a little bit, right? So you can just do whatever you think is best. And I can press just a little bit harder as I go down. See how it's just curling almost at the top of the head, and then down into more finer, thin lines. And to go a little bit longer. So they're kind of long. And you can just do a second little hair or feather, like one or two more. Just like that. So I'm going to add a couple more, just very lightly pressed, so it's going to help with blending it out. See, just underneath the head, it's still a little bit darker. So I'm just going to press right there, just help it fade a little bit out and down. And you can see I'm just pulling out the groove of the head, so it's going a little bit up and back towards the back. At the front of the face, very light, so you're going up and a little bit pulling away. Very, very light. If you need to switch pencils to something lighter, do it. So just going up, so it's just made up of feathers. It's not like it's a one solid line. Okay, so I'm going to pull this a little bit closer and you can see what I've done so far. So there it is, a little bit closer. Great. I haven't used my smudger yet. At the bottom, you'll notice that there's a little bit of the extra feathers. You're going to just lightly flick it towards the back of the throat. They're just kind of curled down and towards the same direction we flicked the feathers up here. And you just start wrapping it, so it's starting to wrap, curl, because it goes very quickly. It just wraps around pretty quick. And then the ruffled feathers and stuff that are here, they're kind of a little bit unruly, I guess. They're a little bit shorter and just a little bit more all over the place, so that's why it's a bit more choppy here. I'm going to build onto it, so I'm going to go to the back of the head here. You don't need to press this hard. And we're just going to, it's like you're wrapping it because it's very rounded, so we're just going to almost connect them. Some individual feathers, a little bit more filled in here. Layering is always good. So going over the same spot a couple times, but very light, adds more depth into the feathers that you're putting into the body. Okay, so it doesn't go, it kind of, eventually as it starts to curl back down, we have these nice long feathers sticking out. So that's when you can just gently make these very thin, I'm going to call them isosceles triangles, where yes, they're very long, but they're still curved, so they're not like straight. You want to flick it out like they're very delicate, thin, and they get a little bit wider where it's coming from the body, and it's not touching that wing that you see over here. It's just next to it. You can bring them in a little bit further. I can pull it in a little bit more. You can see more of that. I did a fair bit of that. Okay, a little bit closer again. This is a little bit closer so you can see what I've done. Okay. Now, towards the bottom of the neck, as it starts to loop back up, Following that, getting it a little bit more shadowed here. So the feathers are slightly sticking out on the sides. And there's a lot of them. Start wrapping this around. Okay, let's finish up here and then we're going to work our way down here because that's where things get kind of interesting, a little bit more complicated, but I know we can do it. So at the top, just underneath the eye, I'm starting to do little flicks, same pencil or charcoal that I'm using. Just a little bit more layered. Filling in a little bit more of the space, but pressing super light. Just around the eye. Especially so over here where the eye is at the back. You can see there's like a little line almost made up of a couple little streaky feathers. And I'm just going to do a couple there. Just minor little details that can add up. Press a bit harder, short little streaks. Fill this in just a little bit more. Keep it pretty dark. A couple accents of some darker ones at the back of the head, at the back of the throat. Couple accents underneath, almost like a little hairy chin. It's not really, but that's just my analogy to help visualize it. Okay, back into the beak. So we have that middle line, remember we made that? It goes into the face, right? Underneath, I'm just going to do a short line again and connect it to the bottom of this beak here. So it's, I have two lines here that are kind of parallel. I'll bring it again a little bit closer. Alright, and then mostly just little feathers and stuff at the top and just a little bit more of an outline up there. Try not to go too thick in terms of outside of where the beak is. There. Okay, so yeah, I have a piece of paper behind here, just makes it so much easier to see as well. I am adding on the end here, going a little bit, almost rounded, filling it in slightly, meaning a little bit darker right there, and then a couple little streaks, just lightly colored, pressing super light at the top and a little bit at the bottom. So it's going to create a bit of shadow. It's not just white, black, white. Okay, and this is where we can start smudging a little bit. So I have my smudger. We can also use a Q-tip. Just erasing my little smears, that's all. Got my smudger for the beak. This is going to help darken it. Just going to go right up to the line. It's a little bit darker down there. You can go over this line too. A little bit at the top, at the end. Going around the eye. I'm just going around that outer circle, not the inner dark eyeball where that pupil is. Just going around that. Just enhancing the streaks that I've done. Going around the edge, curling it in a little bit more. Creating, just letting it come in a little bit more at the top of the head, below where that long hair is sticking out. So just creating kind of like a shadow. Follow it down. Not so much here, but just in this curved part. Yep, spreading that out a bit. Alright, and then from here you can use your eraser. So if you have just a pencil eraser, that's okay. I'm going to bring out a couple highlights. So just at the bottom, I just want to make it a little bit lighter before it goes to the very tip of the beak. I like it a little bit darker down there. And also a bit at the top. I'm just pulling some brightness back into the cheek area. A little bit of brightness there. A little bit at the top of the eye. And in the middle of the neck, just letting some, so you're just letting some of the feathers look like it's hitting more of the light right in the centers, where on the edges it's a tiny bit darker. You can just pull them, so it's almost like you're creating individual feathers in between. It just breaks up all of the darkness. Okay, so this is my, yeah, back to the 2B, that's okay. I'll just touch up on that line that I had here in the middle. And if you lost the line at the top, just very lightly bring it back in. It's brought back in just very lightly. And you can do a couple extra streaks, not as much, right? So just a couple, just to bring out some of the layerings into the neck a bit. And going back to probably a 4B now, I'm just going to go around that outer circle, deepen it up a little bit from the eye, and then a couple little darker streaks in the back where that long feathery hair is sticking out. And just a couple little shapings around the eye. So we're just putting a little bit more back in. Underneath the eye, very short ones. Not a whole ton. All right, I will bring this closer. Okay, cool. Now that we have a lot of the top, like the head, pretty much done, makes it easier to see how it's coming together pretty nicely. Okay, so working my way down, I'm going to go back to that 2B. So we have all of this here. Just going to leave that alone for a minute. We're going to work on this body area. A lot of it's just like this huge wing. Makes sense for the bird. The bird's huge. So you'll notice that that armpit area, before it has all these long hairs kind of just laying over top of it, I'm going to get that in. So you'll notice in the outline you can just mostly do lots of fill. You can do a couple things. You can work around where you want the hairs to, the feathers to lay over top. So it's almost like you're just outlining. You don't need to press as hard at first. So you're just outlining like we did here. These thin looking feathers that are sticking out, flaring out just a little bit, but they're also coming in. So as it comes down here, you have those there, it starts to just kind of spray outwards, kind of flick over to the side. I'm just making some thin ones like that, so we have an idea of where they're going to sit. And then you can do a lot of that dark under the wing accent color is very dark. You don't have to start as dark. Just mostly coloring it and doing little flicks, following the groove of it going down and in between. Here's the start of that. And then, so next to these, we're just going to work our way down. You can start pressing a little bit more on the sides. I'm going to press a little bit harder sometimes, not continually too much. But at the bottom, this is where I want a lot of the grouped feathers are kind of collected down there. So at the bottom, we're just going to break them up. So here's a thin one. I'm going to go up a little bit. Then there's another one. There's another one. And I'm going to layer it. Got a little bit of a layer happening. So you can almost think of it like you have a little bit of a top layer. Just going to loop it, bring it up, loop it, bring it up, and a little bit again, kind of goes up on an angle. And then now you have the bottom layer where you can loop it and do the same thing, bring it up. Like that. So this is where the legs are. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit more. This is that very first leg you see here. Just pressing a little bit light. That's kind of where I stopped for all those groupings of feathers at the bottom. And it starts going into the next layer up top here. So this, mostly this section right here. So you can bring this up a little bit more, or break it up into more little pieces if you feel like you only did a couple. For example, I can just fit another one in here. And then this is where I'm going to put now another layer coming in. So next to, let's go over to these hairs, feathers, keep saying hairs. Start looping it again, coming down this way. You see they're kind of long. And then shorter again, just a couple there. All right. And as it goes up, there's, again, feathers kind of laying over top of what's underneath here. So you can just press a little bit lighter, pull them up a little bit more, because you can always erase things. Okay, you can take up a bit more space before it just goes into some wider looking feathers that are not as dark or pronounced. I'm just filling it in. Just don't press too hard. It makes it harder to erase and to do what you want to do. Just a couple groupings there. Perfect. And then we have another leg. So we have the other side of this leg that's coming up quite a bit. So I'm just pressing again, lighter, trying to get this more outlined. You can see where things are going a little bit easier. Okay, so as we continue up, we just need to add some darker feathers going up, like it's underneath and in between some of these that are coming down here. So just a little bit in there, and it looks like it's covering that left leg, so that that right one that we see here, you can see it more coming out from the body. So you can press a little bit harder on each side to make that a bit more obvious. And this is just a lot of dark. This is a dark area for sure. You want to keep it nice and dark. You can fill it in with some more of these long ones, especially if you didn't do enough. So you can put a couple more in, and then just in between you have some of that darkness showing, just to keep it nice and dark. You don't see too much. It creates nice depth and shadow. Alrighty. So from here, what I'm going to do next. Okay, so the feathers that are overlapping this way, just trying not to get overwhelmed or too frustrated. Like it's going to look good. I know that it's a lot of little layerings. I won't say this is the easiest bird to start with, but it looks awesome. So towards the top, you can see not so dark, right? Pretty light overall. So it just kind of follows from that darkness we made, just loose little streaks. Some loose ones. Filling it in a little bit more. As we get towards the back, you can create a couple feathers here, like we did before with the loops. And then you can put in some thin feathers, those long ones that are just laying over top of everything, right over top. A bit of that. And if you went a little too aggressive, that's okay, you just erase it. Long ones just laying over top. All this business here gets a little bit crazy. That's okay. So I'm just doing some streaks flowing down and through that a little bit to start. Going back into his neck, just adding a couple streaks in here. If you don't want it all just pure white, it adds way more texture and depth. Okay, great. In between here, so remember you did those little feathers underneath. You can just work your way around. This is one way to do it. Keep it dark. Just accent around these lines, these loops that you've made, just a little bit more. Fill it in just a bit, because we do want a bit of a shadow. Even if you went over some of these that you've made, that's okay, because you have an eraser. You just don't want to press extremely hard at first. Just see, I'm just lightly filling it in, streaking it, doing the same thing, thinking feathers. Down here, you can use your 4B. I'm going to darken it fill in, loop around, lightly go inside. So you can still see the outline, right, for the feathers, and then it's just darker filled in. So it's not all just a solid fill. And I'm kind of just working my way up doing that. Keep it nice and dark. Keep the outline still there, pretty obvious. Going up here, but not as dark. You can switch pencils again, something lighter if needed. And then with that, we're just going to keep this top of the leg a little bit darker, as long as you can see the outline. Didn't go and outline all the way at the bottom. I kind of stopped where that bend in the leg is. Add in some darker streaks here. A little bit upwards, then stopped. Going to accent the very back, so the very right side on the lower part of the leg. So accented that. Closer again. See more of the bottom of what we've done. And then I'm going to take my smudger and then erase a little bit. Alright, so right at this neck area, perfect. We're just going to add in some streaks here. Smudge this out a little bit. Blend this in a little bit at the bottom together. Looks a bit smoother overall. It's almost like you're filling it in. So that's all of the collected bottom feathers that we've filled in and outlined. And some streaks up here. Going to fill in these feathers a little bit more that are just underneath where these feathers are going to be laying on top. That's okay, just fill this in for now. And then you can add with your eraser those more white highlights. Okay, so for these lines here, that's just above all of this darkness that we put in, I like to go over the line and streak it a bit to the left. So over this dark line, a bit to the left, and I still have a highlight on the left side. So on this line, over to the left. Stop. On the line, over to the left. Just going to bring this down for a bit of a shadow on this leg on the top half. Same with this leg on the line, just bring it down, just shaped it around, then almost like you're outlining a bit of a knee. So it's like you're wrapping it around. You can go over this line, bring it a bit out to the left so it stays lighter towards the left side. And this is where you can take your eraser or your pencil eraser and just erase a little bit on the kneecap area or the left side of the legs. This might be just, if you went too much, you just put it back in so you don't lose that. Okay. Then we can pull out some kind of like this eraser. Sometimes snipping off a piece of your eraser can keep it, like the edge of it, sharp instead of dull and rounded too much. So I'm just going to follow some of these hairs down. To bring out that highlight. You know, the feathers. Some of those feathers stick out a little bit more. They're nice and light because they're supposed to be in that section. And then follow it a little bit. And see these ones that were coming out. Okay. Those ones, and then these ones laying over top. Erase. Okay. Getting all that stuff off. This is just a paper towel that I've had from before when I was painting, but it's dry. You can just flick off some of the extra erasing so that you're not smudging too much. Even a light brush, something very airy. Okay, now I just go back to popping things a little bit more out again. So that's 4B, for example. Again, any additions, so in the face if you need to, or on a line on the beak, in this upper section at the back, just anywhere. Maybe you want to bring in some more accents, so maybe you want to just very gently sometimes outline some of those hairs that the feathers that you just erased a little bit, but just not overly dark, not necessary. And you can just keep it a little bit darker. You can kind of fill in this area again, fill in some spots underneath those feathers you made underneath. But this is the darkest spot here. I'm calling it the armpit area. Best way to visualize where things are. And just a slight little outline of some of the feathers that we had here. Those are a little bit outlined. If it's too dark, just touch it up with a little bit of eraser. You don't want it overly outlined. Soften it with the eraser, or even a bit of a smudger. But don't press too hard down here. You want it to be kind of faint. It's not one of those areas that are too dark. It's overall pretty light. However, you can add a couple little streaks of those feathers, just a little bit more filled in. And I'm just going over these ones. Remember when we like we used a smudger on the line, I just accent that line again if you want more of a pop. again, outline these ones once again. So I just went over the same spots again, even though after we smudged, just go over it, keep it a little bit darker in the spots you want, nice and dark. And up here, again, just like we did over here, not filled in, but just kind of flick it, follow the flow of the hairs kind of curling up a bit. You can use a lighter pencil, not as dark, this is still the 4B, but just a couple little fills to keep it more of a light gray towards the back here, while this is still staying light. And if you want to, sometimes you smudge things by accident, you can just pop it back out. Any other erasings you want to do? Okay. Great. Got that. And then just kind of smudge this a little bit, following it towards where the hairs are, or the feathers are just folding over. And there we go. We got that, and now we just have to add things to our liking, like it's, usually at a marsh. I've had the pleasure of seeing numerous of these guys sitting really close to one, and boy are they big and pretty cool looking. Darkening right under this crease here of that wing. It's pretty awesome. Pretty distinguishing feature. Same with the top of the head here. Now, at the bottom, I just did slight little bumps, almost like sitting in water. And just did mostly like squiggly lines. Letting my wrist do a lot of the work, very loopy. Go as far down as you want to. Maybe a little bit behind, like there's just a little bit more of that water that you can see, more of that landscape. Okay, on the legs, just above where that knee bend is, a little bit more darkness. Where it's kind of like a knuckle in a way. A little bit darker on the one that's sitting behind. And shape around that knee bend, knuckle area. So it's a little bit white, more there. And if you want to add reeds, nice tall grass, that's what we're going to finish up with. Just smudging some of these feathers that were sticking out of the front. You can also smudge a little bit into the water if you want to cast a bit more of a shadow underneath it. And then in different, you can do them all in the same, like different layers, or just all the same, so it's coming down, straight coming up, and then maybe a tall one here. So the idea of this when I was doing it is I wasn't trying to make anything perfect. It was not the focus of my drawing. This is the focus, the bird, or the heron. And then this is just something around it to set the scene without going too crazy. So maybe another one here, nice and thin at the top. Similar to what we've done here. Remember when we made these flared out feathers that were just sticking nicely curved and curled out? Isosceles triangles is what I call them because they're wider and then they go really thin. Same with these pieces of grass or reeds. And if you have space on your paper, you can either create more water where it's coming from, or just have it disappear at the bottom like I've done over here. And then a little bit on the side, so I have maybe a tall one further up. And continue it. This will be my tall piece, maybe. So for the cattail, I'm just going to do a rounded rectangle. Just streaking very light on the other side, just a little bit more filled in on the right is what I've done, and then pressing a bit harder, going streaking up for a little bit of a point, bit of a tail there. And then you can have a little curved piece. Maybe not that thick. Another layer. Okay. So shadows, you can always add shadows. Yeah, I'm just putting a couple streaks that helps give it more of a grounded, flatter look, calmer. Very intertwiny streaks to make it look like the water's moving a bit more. Or smudging to create that effect. And of course you can smudge anything afterwards. The pieces of grass you want a little bit more smudged along some of the edges, you do that. And if you want to add another cattail like I did over there, you can do that. However, you can sign your painting or drawing. I need to get used to saying drawing because I'm doing a lot of drawing. Okay, let's bring it closer. So there is our blue heron at the marsh. Pretty cool. Take a picture of it. That's going to help bring it, you can see how it's coming about. If there's any little touch-ups you need to do, some minor details. And I'd love to see a result, so you can show us on our Facebook page, Artist Palette Durham. Show us your interpretation. I wonder what pencils you decided to use, if you want to use graphite, charcoal, HB. So we have lots of other drawings coming up too. Love making birds, so I don't know if you follow me, but I've made a ton. And it's good to know like what you want to do next. What did you think of this? Was this hard, a challenge? I would say this one was probably the harder one to do out of all of the birds. So this is a tufted mouse, and I've done a cardinal. We have, what else is coming up? We have lots. So this one, and there's like the blue jay. That's probably a good one to do. That might be a good one. You can always give me ideas. Tell me what you want to do next. A favorite bird, a unique bird that you are thinking of. Chickadee, black-capped chickadee. I'm putting together a bird book, so I'm making a collection. Happy to keep doing more. Okay, thanks for joining, and hopefully you'll draw along or paint along with me another time. Check out artistpaletedurham.com and on our Facebook page and see what's going on. Thank you. Bye.